Thanks. Well, good morning, members, or good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of the RRR Subcommittee. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off videos when you're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write speak in the Teams chat function. I may have difficulty in seeing that since I'm using my iPad, and you will be invited to speak in order. If your question has already been raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request. However, if you wish to build on a point already made, please do so. Please ensure that for complete transparency, there is no material posted in the chat function, which is in fact a contribution to the debate and should therefore be shared in the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call, though I think this is probably less likely as the subcommittee is not a decision-making committee, but may make recommendations to full council. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or write leave in the Teams chat function, and then join when you rejoin the meeting. This will allow us to record member presence and ensure that the meeting is quorate at all times. I should be grateful if contributions are focused on areas where clarification is required by a member or to propose an alternative to a recommendation in a report. Nick, can you provide the sederunt and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Leader. We've had no apologies, and all members are present on Teams with the exception of Councillors Fairbairn, Johnston and Scobie.
Thanks, and I confirm my agreement to the remote participation of all members. Do any members have a declaration of interest which they wish to make? I'll have a look on the chat, just make sure there's nothing. Okay. Okay, that looks as if there are no declarations of interest. So the next item is the latest position on the COVID-19 response from the Chief Officer for Response, Renewal and Recovery. This report provides details of the current position in terms of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the Council's contribution. So I've just heard that Dumfries and Galloway is to go down into level 1. It is one of the council areas to go down into level 1. Rich Greaveson and Mark Thompson are available on Teams to assist members with any questions. Richard, is there anything you want to add before we go on to questions?
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, members. Just to say that I wonder if it would be helpful, Leader, through you, if colleague Mark Thompson just gives us a wee update, some of the data that we provided in the report at the time of writing, maybe slightly out of date now. And of course, Mark could give a wee update in terms of what that level move to level 1, as you've described, actually means for us in reality, if that's helpful, Leader, through you.
I think that would be very useful. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, elected members. With regards to COVID cases, the situation has remained relatively stable since the time of writing on the report, and infection levels remain very low. In the 7 days up until 27th of May, there were 6 positive cases, which is very similar to the last week reported in the report. The positivity rate, 7-day positivity rate, remains the same for Dumfries and Galloway per 100,000, although the rate for Scotland itself has risen from the mid-30s that's in the report up to the high 50s per 100,000 as well, and I think that is reflective of the First Minister's statement just a few minutes ago as well, and the decisions taken there. With regards to the vaccination, obviously vaccination numbers have continued to increase, and we are looking at a total of 156,000 overall vaccinations, 90,201 of which are first dose vaccinations and 65,976 second dose vaccinations. And again, we have 78.2% of our adult population with a first vaccination compared to a Scottish average of 72.7%. And 61.8% of our adult population with a second dose compared to a Scottish average of 45.5%. With regards to the move to level 1, most significant changes are an increase for indoor socialising in a public place. 8 people from 3 households can now meet in a public place indoors. Outdoors, 12 people from 12 households can meet, which is a welcome increase. The capacity for soft play and fun fairs to restart is now allowable in Dumfries and Galloway in a level 1 area. From a hospitality perspective, indoors 8 from 3 households, outdoors 12 from 12. Socialising rules apply, and the indoor drinking time has increased from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. That really covers the most significant changes. But one other one of note is the weddings and events. The numbers have increased from 50 to 100, and with regards to more organised stadia and events, maximum capacities have increased twofold with the move from level 2 to level 1. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for letting us know what additional things we can do come the change of date. Any questions for Mark and Richard? I've got Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Leader. A couple of points. Within the cases that we're getting through the week, are any of them the Indian variant? And with regards to the vaccination programme, there were reports that Dumfries and Galloway was behind schedule or behind the rest of Scotland on was it 18 to 49-year-olds? Are those accurate, or is it just that we've done more? We have a older population, so we've done more people that are over 49. I think that's 2 things.
Thanks, Councillor Hislop. So, through you, Leader, in terms of your second point, I think I'll address that first. There are some variances. We did see the report that was highlighted by one of our local MSPs, highlighting that we were behind the national average in a category. I think the 40 to 49-year-olds at that given stage. But the programme, it needs to be looked at in the round to build that overall picture. Second doses has obviously been important for Dumfries and Galloway, particularly with our demographic, as you referenced as well. And whilst in certain categories at certain times, we will see the performance below the Scottish average. If you look at most categories and most groupings, you will see that we have outperformed the vast majority of health boards in mainland Scotland. With regards to that particular age group, indications from NHS colleagues were that age group would rapidly be completed in terms of its first dose vaccinations this week. We'll hopefully be able to provide a further update on that in due course. And just another point with regards to vaccinations, all elected members will have received an invite from NHS colleagues for the 17th of June, 1 p.m. on the 17th of June, to receive a briefing and update on the vaccination programme direct from Chief Executive of NHS Dumfries and Galloway and colleagues as well. And apologies, Councillor Hislop, could you repeat the first point of your question?
It was with regard to the positive cases. Are we seeing any of the Indian variant or any other variant that hasn't been here before?
Thanks, Councillor Hislop, and apologies for asking again. There is no indications at this stage that we have seen any cases of the April 02 variant. Colleagues in NHS Public Health remain vigilant for that, given the increase in numbers, particularly of that variant across the UK and in Scotland. But we have had as yet no confirmed cases. We have plans in place should we see cases which may result in a rapid localised escalation in numbers to roll out very focused testing and to try and manage the impacts of that outbreak. But as yet, no, we have not seen any.
Thanks. Councillor Hislop, does that satisfy you?
Yes, thanks.
Any other questions for Mark or Richard? If not, can I just raise a couple of things? I'm not necessarily expecting you to know the answers to these, but they were both raised with me this morning. One was that I don't know whether this is just certain schools or not all schools, that teachers were not being allowed to go off to get vaccinated. So they were being told that they either had to phone up and reorganise their vaccination for out with the school day or take unpaid leave. And I have to say that rather worried me, given that many of us had actually been arguing that teachers should be a priority for vaccination, that if there was a case that teachers are actually finding it difficult to get vaccinated, when obviously that is not only for their own protection, that of their colleagues, but that of their pupils as well. So I just wondered if anybody had any further information on that, and whether it was a council-wide or whether it was just particular schools that were saying that. And the other thing, again, about schools was that parents were being told that they weren't allowed to attend their children's sports days, which seems a little odd, since they'd be allowed to go over to Hampden to watch the Euros, but they weren't being allowed to see their kids running in the egg and spoon race. It did seem to be a little odd to me as well. If you have any information, again, I know that I'm probably asking the wrong people, but if you did have any information on that, maybe that would be helpful.
I'll respond on that one, Leader, if I may. I see the interim chief exec wants to come in, the Leader, so I'll defer to Fiona, if that's okay.
Yeah, Chief Executive. I think you're on mute. You're still muted, Fiona.
Good afternoon, members. I'm my breath taken away by what you've just said about teachers not being able to go for vaccinations. I'm not sure if I've got one of the education heads of service on this meeting just now. If I haven't, I'll maybe ask Mark to step back after this item and on my behalf phone them, so we are able to ascertain the position. I would imagine, and unfortunately I am just imagining here, that in relation to outdoor activities at school, should they be going ahead, then should social distancing be able to be enforced, which of course it would be and encouraged, then we would be seeing parents participating in this way. But again, I'll ask Mark to stand back from the meeting and go and make this call on my behalf, members. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Executive. Richard, did you want to add anything further to that?
It was just to provide members with assurances that certainly the corporate message has gone out across the whole council, that we will be absolutely supporting any member of staff to go through the vaccination process, and if that's within the working day, then that's something that we're supporting, and we've publicised that widely across the staff group. So I'm with the chief exec on this one. It's news to me, but I'm sure Mark will get to the bottom of it, Leader.
Well, thanks very much for that. It was just raised with me this morning, so I didn't have any opportunity to follow up. I mean, any other way, but it may be something that's raised with other members as well. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I'm a wee bit late actually, but can we make sure when Mark speaks to education that all education staff, not just teachers?
Absolutely.
Again,
yeah.
Yeah, again through you, Chair. As far as I'm concerned, it's all council staff members, right across the board, both in terms of our duty of care towards our staff and the wider promotion of health that we want to impact upon within the community. So rest assured that will be the position, Councillor Ferguson. Thank you, Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Any other questions on this item? Okay, thanks very much. And I think we were just being asked to note the current position with regard to the wider response and vaccination problem and testing and support to the vulnerable. And as Mark said, we have been invited to a seminar with the NHS where we can obviously put follow up on some of these questions around the vaccination programme. Nick?
Sorry, Lady, yes, I think I'm right in saying Councillor Hislop wanted to come back in.
So he did. Thanks. Councillor Hislop.
It's just, is there any evidence that the younger age group aren't coming forward? We've seen reports from other areas that 50% of some appointments are being missed for vaccination. And is there something that we could do just to keep it out there that, you know, we're not over this yet. We need to make sure that everybody goes for their vaccination.
Anybody able to take that? Again, it may be one more for the NHS, but I'm not,
No,
does anybody have any information on that?
Through you, Leader, I'm happy to respond. I can say that this is a matter that is discussed weekly as part of the vaccination group and indeed at the tactical LRP. The registration for vaccination appointments, as Councillor Hislop have said, have now opened for 18 to 29-year-olds, and the uptake has been described thus far as being encouraging. So certainly it's something that we're keeping a close eye on, but at the moment it appears to me that our young people in the region are acting responsibly and supporting the programme.
Councillor Hislop.
Just welcome that detail, because I think it's something we as a council should be helping the NHS encourage people to come and make sure that they get their vaccination.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands up, so if we go on to item 4, which is the report which is detailing the service evaluating process undertaken to date, details of the links between this programme of work, the Council's transformation programme and the budget development plan for 2022-23. And again, Richard's here to assist members with any questions, but one of the things that we are being asked to do at 2.4 is to discuss the relationship between renewal activity, the Council's transformation programme and the budget development plan for 2022-23. Richard, is there anything you want to add to this?
Thank you, Leader. Just to reaffirm that comment, I think the report provides an update on the restart and renewal activity across each directorate, and I know that's being reported back through service committees, and it also highlights the work and the actions aligned with the visitor management programme, which has been very successful so far, and obviously we plan for a busy summer ahead as well. But most importantly, as you've highlighted, Leader, the importance of the renewal work aligning with the transformation programme and the future budget setting process, I think is critical in terms of restart and renewal, shaping those evaluation sessions and indeed the opportunity to make sure that the proposals that come forward for members' consideration in terms of future transformation programmes are done so through the lens of COVID. So we learn from what's happened over the past, 15 months, 16 months now. I can provide members with assurances that we're working closely with Mike Shepley and Paul Garrett in this regard, and indeed we will be working together to provide SLT with some initial scoping information, which ultimately will then be brought forward in a way that we then can provide options for members' consideration, which will reflect the COVID learning and provide more efficient, effective and economic services moving forward. So I'm happy to take questions, comments. I've got colleague Kirsty Peden with me as well, who's been heavily involved in the programme, and happy to support the debate through you, Leader.
Thank you. Can I invite any questions or comment indeed on the items which we are being asked to discuss in terms of the links between the transformation programme and renewal? Any volunteers? Stephen Thompson.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, it was just a question, and I've spoken briefly with Richard about this, just in relation to a ward issue, but obviously with sort of uniforms out and about, as it were, we're all council staff ultimately at the end of the day. I'm just sort of trying to get a, you know, through our very actions during this period, will there be opportunities to sort of get the teams like sort of community asset teams, restart and recovery teams, community safety teams, to basically start acting as one council? Because I'm conscious that we do have people out there trying to help people and sort of look after littering or other fly tipping issues at the same time as sort of try and get things restarted and encourage visitors. And you know, so it's really about, is this a good opportunity for sort of bringing those things together and a more streamlined one council type of service?
Kirsten.
Richard, I don't know if you want to come in first or if you'd like me to respond. Thanks, then, Leader. Just in response, Councillor Thompson, I'm very pleased to say that at a local level, the structure we have in place ensures that exactly what you're describing is happening, with a focus on visitor management, return of significant numbers of visitors, and also town centre restart. So in each of the 4 areas, then we've got staff such as community safety officers, the assets team supervisors, third sector DG, and a range of other kind of partners depending on the localities, basically being kind of coordinated almost by the ward officer type approach, where we're sharing information, we're passing information very quickly, and we're trying to respond as one. And I would say that's working very positively. And we're seeing the benefits of having assets and roads teams, you know, that kind of greater integration that's been happening there, and sharing that information wider with community safety officers through to police and other partners like Forestry Land Scotland. So very much I see the model and why it's hopefully being, you know, we're seeing successes, particularly over a busy bank holiday weekend, is because we're taking that one approach and it's very local, and we're acting upon the intelligence that each of us is gathering with and from community representatives in local communities.
Okay, Stephen, is that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously really encouraging, and I think it's just that there's the responding to the current situation, if you like, and how we reopen for business, if you like, but also there's the very, I suppose, persistent and ongoing issues that are raised by people who aren't visitors here but are resident here, sort of saying, well, yeah, but what about these community safety issues that are maybe happening as a result of increased visitors or changes of behaviour in terms of activity? So it's about how do we, I mean, we are always operating under pressure in terms of resources and targeting those effectively. So how do we, you know, is there an opportunity transformationally to look at that in a sort of smart, medium to long term way? I think that's what I'm trying to get to.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Thompson. I think that the point is very well made. I mean, I think one of the things that we've benefited from over the past 15 months is, as Kirsty said, that whole multi-agency approach, but also the way that the council has brigaded resource across directorates. And has worked in a different way with that ultimate community need as the goal in terms of deliverability. In terms of the specific area that you talk about, the community safety, resilience, and indeed community protection teams have had to work closer than they've ever done, along with the safe trading team, etc. In terms of, again, bringing all of that resource together where it's most been required as part of our response to the pandemic. So what's been critical in our discussions and our thinking in terms of the evaluation sessions that have been mentioned in the paper, which have been delivered in partnership with Mike Shepley's team, and you know, has been that approach to ensure that where there has been examples of that more efficient and effective way of working across the council, that we capture that and we look to embed that into our transformation programmes moving forward, which will not only provide better services but hopefully create efficiencies as well.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thanks. I've lost teams to see if anybody else is No, I don't. Anybody else got any questions, or indeed any views, particularly in the issue of the discussion around the links that Richard and Stephen have just been discussing? Rob, Councillor Davidson, Rob.
Thanks, Leader. It was effectively to welcome the paragraphs under discussion. I mean, I think that's the approach that collectively we were looking for, and starting to draw those links between the transformation programme and I guess everything that's happened since, I think is a really valuable, worthwhile exercise. And I think when we started discussing this and what it might look like, that was very much what we were looking for. So, I mean, from my perspective, certainly I welcome this, and I think it looks to me as though it's really, setting off on the right track, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Kendra Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's the budget setting is going to be very important, how we deal with the transformation and the budget. Just this morning in the shop, one of our staff came in and told my wife the verbal abuse she received on the front desk at one of our offices because there was no members of staff within the building because they're working from home. Now, that's something we'll need to look at as well, how we protect our staff on the front line, because somebody doing their job doesn't need to be called names just because other people are doing what they're meant to be doing, staying at home, keeping safe, making sure everybody else is safe. And I think we need to think when we are doing it, we might not be able to go fully transformed into working from home because there are members of the public out there who don't access our services electronically. So we might need some work on that, see how we do that to make sure that we can keep those members of the public who can't access electronically our services happy. The other thing, I think, when you read the press or that, you see that there's issues with there's a budget gap because of the pandemic, etc. And in 317 it says we need to be clear about what we do. Now, one of the worst things I think we do is we give people things and then we end up we can't afford to do it and we have to take it away. So I think we need to be clear that anything that we do in the future is sustainable and we can make sure that we keep that in place so that we're not giving people something and then taking it away. Because I think that's something that people don't like. If they don't have it, they don't miss it. But if they do have it, then we take it away, they miss it. So I think we need to be very clever about what we do deliver in the future.
Thanks, Ivor. I think that's the point about staff safety is very important. I was several weeks ago involved where there's a very unpleasant incident where a female member of staff working on her own in HQ, somebody managed to get in. She thought it was a postal delivery. It wasn't. It was actually a somewhat disturbed member of the public who made life quite difficult for her. Fortunately, she kept her head and managed to get the issue resolved. But that certainly worries me that there could be circumstances where members of our staff are actually at some risk because everybody, the numbers of people who are normally in the buildings are not around. So I think it is something that we need to keep an eye on to ensure that staff safety is foremost, as well as changing our practices.
Through you, Leader, I'm happy to just respond. Or Fiona would like to speak first.
I mean, this is regrettably, and it doesn't make it acceptable, but it is regrettably a feature of public service, which is why we have in place the policies that we do, which are zero tolerance against any form of abuse against our staff. It has no place here, it will not be tolerated, and action will be taken. And even in the space of the short space of time that I have been with you, then matters have had to be reported to Police Scotland in relation to staff. So let me assure members that we are mindful of the circumstances staff are working in, mindful also that members of the public have perhaps a shorter fuse just because of what we have been through. And the big message going out to staff is this will not be tolerated, action will be taken, and please report it and you will have all the support you need. And thank you very much to members for the support you've given us within the currency of this meeting on this important matter. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Richard, do you want to add anything?
Just perhaps on the other points Councillor Hislop mentioned, Leader, I think in terms of that blended model of service delivery, that's something that we obviously will be looking to build upon, but the health and well-being of our staff and indeed the services we provide in the best possible way to our communities are critical in that whole evaluation framework, as is the communication to customers and to the community as a whole. And I think Councillor Hislop's point about what we do differently being sustainable, so that we can build on that and not have to then change operating models that seem to be not working, is again a critical point in terms of how we move forward. So I appreciate the comments made by Councillor Hislop in that regard.
Thank you. Councillor Hislop, do you want to come back at all?
No, just quite happy with the fact that from what the Chief has said, action has been taken over the last couple of weeks, because, you know, I realise people's might be on a short fuse just now, but it still doesn't or shouldn't allow them to actually abuse some of our staff who, it's not their fault, it's just the situation that we're in. And I think it's good to hear that we are looking after our staff. I know we've always done that, but I think we need to just make sure that it won't happen too much just now.
Fiona?
Chair, if I can, just for completeness, then if I can ask Councillor Hislop just privately to come back to me with the details of that particular incident, to make sure it's within sights of the management team concerned and any other action that we might need to take. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Maitland. Jane.
Thank you, Leader. I'm totally with on Councillor Hislop's point and everything that everybody has said with respect to zero tolerance of abuse and our policies on lone working. I'm totally with that. But let me twist it round the other way. Is there not an issue here about a member of staff not having the training to be able to say to a member of the public, I will help you, I will deal with this, let me assist you, what is your problem? And not simply saying that there is nobody here who can help, or I can't get through to the right service. I mean, I'd be annoyed as well. Everybody can do something to placate an angry member of public and to turn it round. And my view is that there's an issue maybe of training here, as well as the absolute determination to keep our staff safe. I'm totally with you on that. But there's two sides to this story.
Joan, if anyone wants to come back on that. I know the incident in which I referred to, the member of staff did try and help. And the reason I got involved is that eventually, because she was trying to get somebody to speak to this disturbed person, she put them through to me, but actually sort of tipped me off that this wasn't quite right. And it became obvious fairly quickly that the person had fairly significant mental health issues, to be honest. But so I don't think it's necessarily the case that staff are not trying to help. It's sometimes if it's not exactly what the member of the public wants, they're still having issues. And it can be frightening if you're an individual there on your own with somebody who is clearly whose mental health is not very good and may become violent or whatever. Now, Fiona, maybe you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think I would want to reassure members that draw matters to our attention, and clearly we will examine them, and if there is any need for further support or further training for staff, then that will be provided. But one of the things we should all be cautious of is trying to second guess what's happening in certain circumstances. And all we know is what Councillor Hislop has told us. And I think it would be, inappropriate, Chair, to second guess what may or may not have happened in these circumstances. And I think even our most experienced staff members can sometimes be quite taken aback by what is presented to them in the heat of the moment. So I think if you'd allow us, members, to take this away, then rest assured it will be properly looked at. Thank you.
Jane.
Thank you. No, I'm not actually specifically talking about an individual instance. What I'm concerned about is, and in fact, the issue has been raised, and the example put me in mind of the contact centre, where there seems to be a passing on of people to services, which I thought was completely not the case. I understood that the contact centre was about satisfying a member at the first point of contact, and not waiting for a service to come back when they possibly aren't available. So that's really what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, thanks. Fiona, did you want to come in on that?
Just conscious that you want to focus on this report, but I did just want to again just offer assurance here. Clearly, that is always our objective. If somebody contacts us, they should only have to contact us once. They shouldn't be passed from pillar to post. I think, as I shared with Councillor Maitland and other members, we have got particular pressure points in the contact centre which have been drawn to my attention. I am working with senior colleagues to look at arrangements there, all with the intention of improving that service so that it delivers the standards that we expect within the council. Thank you.
Thanks. So can I invite members? I think we've probably deviated slightly from the report, although it's still important and staff safety is important, to invite any further reflections on the links between transformation, RRR and the budget development, if anybody's got views or reflections they want to put forward at this point. I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, in that case, what have we been asked to do? We've asked to note the first 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, and we have had some discussion about the relationship between renewal activity, the transformation programme and budget development plan. If people have further views to bring forward on that, then I'm sure there will be additional opportunity to do that either through the political groups. And I'm sure that Richard or Mark will be happy to come and speak with the political groups if they wish to have further discussion on that issue. I just volunteered you. Hope that's all right, Richard.
That's fine.
Okay. If we can go on to item 5, which is Dumfries and Galloway, our shared endeavour. This report follows on from the presentation provided by the Interim Chief Executive at the April meeting of the subcommittee about the Social Renewal Advisory Board report, and the response from COSLA proposes a complementary consideration of the other National Advisory Group report on economic recovery and sets out some emerging partnership issues for a region's renew and recovery activity. And we've got Richard Reeves and Liz Manson on Teams to assist with any questions. Richard, do you or Liz want to say anything before we start?
I think just for me, Leader, very briefly, we keep talking about the importance of partnerships and the way that we've worked during the pandemic in terms of that very much that multi-agency approach. I think all of certainly the partners around the resilience partnership see this as a real opportunity to learn from the different way we've operated together over this period, and indeed with our other partners, wider partners, and indeed our communities. in terms of how we will learn and operate moving in the future, so to speak. So I know there's certainly a keenness and a willingness from colleagues within those resilience partnerships to look at working in different ways, to perhaps identify resources and bring those resources together to work in different ways moving forward. And again, would welcome direction and support from members in terms of the opportunities that present us moving forward in that way, so to speak.
Can I invite members' questions and comments, please? Because I think the heat is getting to everyone. Councillor Davidson, Rob.
Thanks, Leader. Well, I guess it's a point and a question. I think it will be really important that we sort of navigate away back from the really valuable work that the Resilience Partnership's been doing over this, I guess, extended period of crisis, and I suppose back to the pre-crisis forms of partnership working. I mean, we don't want to lose the tactical responsiveness that the Resilience Partnership has had, but I guess there are, I suppose, fairly well-developed structures that we also need to potentially reactivate in order to take this work forward. Fingers crossed as we start to exit the pandemic in due course. So keen to hear Richard's thoughts on that. And the second one was looking at paragraph 3.14, not least. I suppose it's where there's the clearest example of it. It strikes me we have an awful lot of plans and strategies. We've probably acquired about as many plans and strategies as we would possibly want. And I just wonder, although it isn't necessarily the primary, in fact, it's not the primary objective of this exercise, but I wonder if it nevertheless represents or presents us with a useful opportunity to maybe streamline a few of these down, because there are so many of them, I think, at this point that potentially there's a risk that really good information is missed or overlooked, or the linkages between different plans and strategies maybe don't receive the attention or are capitalised on as much as they could be. Or maybe it's part of this Renew, Build Back Better process that, fewer plans that do more stuff might be a useful part of the process. And in all honesty, I've only started thinking about that having read through this list of plans and strategies, and I know that we have an awful lot more of them into the bargain, and that's just as a council, never mind all of our other partners. But there's maybe something to be said for a simple and straightforward approach. After all, it actually worked very well during the pandemic. But a couple of observations, and I'm keen to hear what officers and members have to say in response to them. Thanks, Leader.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, yes, I think some of these may be required by legislation, and that's maybe why they're there, because they're actually required by legislation. But they sort of beg the question why there's two different. There's a local child poverty action report, and separate to that, there's a poverty and inequality strategy. And you think that that they ought to be dovetailed together, really, and also the children's services plan, and that again obviously would link with the child poverty action reports and so on as well. So, can I invite anybody who knows whether or not we can streamline some of these?
Yeah, I'm happy perhaps to start the conversation, and you're absolutely right that we do indeed have far more plans and strategies than that. What the Community Planning Partnership has to do, and as I'm looking at the faces around the virtual table today, I think nearly all members have either been at least one meeting or indeed have chaired it and been involved as a board member. So you will be aware that one of the things that the partnership tried to do was to identify the sort of the most strategic thematic plans that have a direct link to the local outcomes improvement plan. And that was one way that the Community Planning Partnership Board has tried to make sense and find its way through the plethora of plans that are around. And as the leader has said, many of these are statutory plans. And again, by having an update at each meeting of the partnership board, We try and make the connections between the plans so that we are being as efficient and effective as we can be. There's no duplication, but equally we're giving the focused attention that is required to each of these very important areas. And one of the discussions that Richard and Fiona and myself have been having in the last couple of weeks is really about how do we get the benefit that we've got from the focus on COVID through the Local Resilience Partnership. How do we translate that into that peacetime building back better? Because one of the challenges is obviously that the Local Resilience Partnership and the focus, there's been that shared endeavour, there's been a focus on addressing and problem solving. And in normal times, partnership working doesn't have that real drive and that real opportunity. We had been looking to the LOIP because of its focus on inequalities as the driver for the Community Planning Partnership Board to really focus members and get partners to come together in a way that they hadn't before. Because generally the partnership working, it's about influence and direction, that it doesn't always have the power or indeed budget to be making big decisions about things. So I think that's where we're trying to get to, and that this subcommittee working in a different way, where it's a more deliberative forum perhaps than some other committees and subcommittees, will be a very helpful place for us to hear your thinking and for us, as we're doing here, to share our thinking with you. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks. Rob, do you want to come back? Or?
I wasn't expecting to have the opportunity to. I suppose in the first instance, I'm just keen to highlight it. I think as part of what I think we might be able to achieve in terms of the Triple R agenda, over the remainder of this council term. I guess I'm also aware that that there is that natural break point coming up in terms of elections in due course as well. So what the new council will wish to do in terms of plans, etc., will potentially be different. Apart from obviously where, as the leader quite rightly says, there's the legislative requirement that you must have one. But I think that taking the time to build this into our considerations would certainly not be wasted effort, I suspect. But I'm also quite happy to, I'd quite freely admit that I haven't developed my thinking on that much further than that at this point. I've started off from fairly basic principles. We have a lot of them. Maybe we need to look at how we streamline. But beyond that, I would freely concede I haven't been able yet to come up with any particularly concrete ideas of what that might look like. But I hope the process we're going into might help us collectively get a handle on some of the opportunities that might be there. And I suppose the other thing that I would just want to make clear is that I wouldn't want to suggest that the areas of policy covered by all of those plans that are listed at 3.14 are anything other than absolutely important. It's a question in my mind about how we engage with them and make the most of them in terms of good policy and serving the region as effectively as we can. So I certainly wouldn't want anyone to think that I've an idea of one being privileged above another in policy terms. That's certainly not what I'm suggesting. But I hope that's helpful, Leader. As I say, even in terms of my own thinking, it's very much a work in progress.
Thanks. That is helpful, actually, because I think as you know, that we have had some discussion recently, and the discussion continues as to how we enhance the role of the CPP board in terms of driving the agenda forward. That it's very good at information sharing, but we haven't always had possibly driven the agenda in the way that we might have done, certainly that's been a matter of discussion for members. sorry, for some members, and there are obviously other members of the CPP board present at this meeting. So if they have views about how maybe we could ensure that there's a bit more of a focus on from the CPP board on those parts of the ensuring that the sorts of action, sort of joint partnership working is actually taking place, rather than just telling each other about what we're doing, but it's actually taking place. That will be useful. And sorry, I'd like that if anybody has other members who are members on the CPP have actually got any views on that, we'd be interested to hear what they are. Fiona.
Chair, there's actually a few members wish to speak, so I'll maybe come in after them. Thank you.
Okay, I thought I saw some hands flashing up and down. I've got Councillor Carruthers, Maitland and Hislop. So, Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Leila. If you didn't mind, I'll pick up on the same point, 3.14. Wasn't going to mention it, but because it's been discussed, Rob's brought it up, I think I maybe will. So, it tells us about the COVID recovery plans, one of 12 plans that are recognised by the Community Planning Partnership Board as key strategic level, with others being, and it goes on and tells about the other 11. So just for absolutely clearness, I think I'm just telling Richard or Liz who needs to answer this, or maybe a combination of both of these. It looks like, so they've got them 12 plans, the COVID-19 recovery plan being one of them. Can you remind me, if that's the case, who the partners are, which I'm sure most of us will know, who the partners are on the actual board, and which actual plans relate to what organisation, please?
Thanks, Liz. You're muted still, Liz. No, your mute's gone back on again. They have a habit of doing that.
Yeah, that's it now.
That's fine now.
Can you hear me now? Good. Yes, certainly. So the membership of the Community Planning Partnership Board covers the organisations that have a statutory responsibility, the same statutory responsibility for community planning, which is the Council, NHS, Police Scotland, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and South of Scotland Enterprise. And we also have third sector, which is referenced in the guidance about the local outcomes improvement plan. So beyond that, the board itself undertakes an annual review of membership, and over the years it has consolidated the membership to also include the housing sector, the further and higher education sector, the Westtrans, the Regional Transport Partnership. We've also identified representation from the private sector and the community sector are appropriate to have on our board. So, as I say, for some of these, there's a very direct statutory role that the organisations have, and for others, it's been our arrangements that we've felt they've got an important part to play in that wider partnership discussion. In terms of the plans at 3.14, they do tend to be council and NHS, and again that ties in with the statutory requirement. In many cases, guidance that's issued about these plans requires or suggests that the Community Planning Partnership Board endorses them. So, as I say, between them, I think they are all led by Dumfries and Galloway Council or NHS, Dumfries and Galloway, or obviously the Regional Transport Strategy, also the Regional Transport Partnership has a role in that.
Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. No, thanks. So that was the glaring point you started to pick up on there, that it's at 3.14, it's very, very heavy council. But I think IGB, I think Andy Ferguson, or he was in it with the chair of the IGB, sits on the partnership now as well. And you look at the Health and Social Care Partnership Strategic Plan, that's there. But when I read that, it just felt very, very much council heavy, and it relates to the second recommendation. Is probably where I'm coming from in the discussion. Because it's the council heavy, you've got a number of strategic partnership partners that are sitting on there. Then you have some more to the side. I think that's a point that's probably just worth making. It looks so council heavy when you look at this, and it probably feels a bit council heavy, but not just as much because it's chaired and vice chaired by council and NHS. But I do think there's something could be looked at that partnership and how these plans actually net in with each other. Even recently, the local housing strategy has almost no merit whatsoever in regards to the local development plan. That's 2 council plans, and there's obviously clear, strong links between them. I think this could really have a root and branch review and a complete just a real girdle up, I think, to get these sorted out. Is there too many? Maybe no, but it needs to be reconfigured and dealt with in a different way. Probably it's more pointless. It's more what I'm trying to make there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, each year the community planning executive group and the board itself looks at its membership, looks at its arrangements, and we do some benchmarking. We discuss things with other community planning partnerships, as well as there's a new national body just now, and these questions are being discussed in every other community planning partnership, because what we want is to have an equal relationship with a number of other organisations and partners, so that we have got that rounded approach to what we're doing in Dumfries and Galloway. There is an issue, of course, about capacity, and what you will find is that the public sector organisations do have that particular professional skills that can contribute to these plans and strategies, as well as obviously there being a statutory requirement on them to do so. But I think one of the features that has been often remarked upon at our board meeting is the way in which particularly the chair and the members, it's very much on a shared basis, that while the membership might be public sector heavy, there is very much an equal respect and value given to all the partners round the table.
Thanks, Liz. I think maybe one of the things that we struggle with a little bit, would be fair to say, is that because it's predominantly the council and the health and social care partners who are responsible for the strategies, is that we maybe don't get quite the amount of engagement from the other partners as we would like, because it seemed to be a bit like that's the council's business, or that's the NHS or sort of health and social care partnerships business, rather than that's all our businesses. And obviously things like, you know, poverty and inequality is everybody's business. It isn't just sort of relegated to one part of the public sector. But that's one of the things I think that we're struggling with in terms of, you know, how we actually tackle that effectively. Councillor Maitland, Jane.
Thank you, Elaine. I think everybody is sort of feeling their way here to a bit of a change. There's an opportunity. I really do think a big opportunity here, and I haven't quite decided what it is yet. But I do see that there is, and I think that we should be looking ahead, thinking what we've got. We've got the IJB. I think horizon scanning, I think there is going to be quite a bit of change going on there. I think whether we agree with it or not, I think we've got to probably look and see what we can get out of it, to do the best by people locally. What I wanted to ask actually really was about, it's about, people have been talking about the partnership, the Community Planning Partnership Board. And I agree. I mean, I think it's great to get round the table and to talk about what we've been doing, and to keep seeing each other. You know, that's something which we must not forget, the real value of seeing people around the table, and the sort of consistent people around the table, and the building up of relationships, because I think we have managed to do well because we have been spending a bit of time investing in those relationships for the last 20 years. And we've got advantages in terms of our coterminosity. But, you know, I sort of agree. I think it's Ian who was suggesting that maybe it's that, you know, the partnership board might seem a bit council heavy. But actually, do you know, we've got the oomph, the power, the knowledge, arguably the democratic mandate. to push that forward. And I think it's probably you just accept that's part and parcel of the structures that we've got. But I want to sort of think about the opportunity that we've got in terms of bringing together the executive group, because the community planning executive group consists of highly paid officials whose job it is to push forward those plans that we've got, all those plans. And Christie suggested that I mean, I didn't think he actually quite dared suggest this, but he he was suggesting the agenda was prevention and getting ahead of the game. You know, should we be using the people in the executive group and tasking them with pushing these things forward as a group? But I'm not certain how the governance of that can actually be structured. So I'm sort of flashing around here. I want to be sure that that there is proper oversight, because I am concerned the IJB could be a very small number of people with a very kind of a constant churn of governance, of people at the top and taking part, of members, and it's quite difficult to keep an eye on what is actually happening unless you've got really clear structures and people are sure of their roles and remits. So I think there's an opportunity here, but I also think that there are pitfalls in terms of democratic accountability. So I just throw that in, which I'm sure is completely useless, but it's an opportunity to think about.
Okay, I mean, I know Fiona, do you want to come back in on that? You were intending to come in after Councillor Hislop had spoken, but are you wanting to come in on that point?
I'm actually glad I listened to all of the members because this discussion is really helpful. So, you know, I'm sure every area in Scotland is the same round about the way that we have worked together. And as we navigate our way back from how we've worked together through resilience, we'll have to bring the best of that with us and take that into our normal arrangements, our standing arrangements, which have to change to reflect where we've been, and which have to change to reflect the scale of the challenge our communities have in front of them. So during the pandemic, then, for obvious reasons, the executive group, which is referred to in paragraph 321, was stood down, and that's absolutely understandable. We've stood that back up, and the executive group will be having its first meeting, which I'll chair on Friday of this week. And that is the group that really services and supports the Community Planning Partnership Board. I call it the engine room, because it's the group that makes sure that the things that colleagues want to get done, and if they can't get done, then the board knows why they can't get done. So I do believe that you know, our first task as an executive group is to look at our respective recovery plans, because from that earlier one that was produced back in September, things have changed. We need to recover more, because we've been through another lockdown since then, and our economy has been even harder hit. And there are hidden harms as well, and we will want to ascertain what those are. So from that meeting, we should be looking at what are the top priorities for the public servants who serve our communities. What do our communities need most? Now, I do think, members, your LOIP has served you very well, but that shared sense of endeavour that we have seen during COVID, and that real drive, we need to see that now more than ever from those of us who served in Dumfries and Galloway, because of the recovery. People need to see that. So I do think we need the coherence of a single plan, and that is something we need to work towards. Councillor Maitland's points are bang on the money, as I would say. You know, that horizon scanning is really important, because change is coming. and we need to try and be ahead of that change. And when I say we, it's because the privilege of working for councils is that we work for organisations who have the democratic mandate. But the way in which we do things can empower others and engage them. And I think this council does that very, very well. So I do think there's a bit of a leap of faith here. I think we need to do some tidying up of our council plan, and I am hopeful that we'll be able to bring that to the meeting of the council before the recess. You wanted incorporation of the carbon zero objectives to be within the plan, which Lorna has been doing a huge amount of work in, and also the plan to be cited on recovery, which this discussion is very good evidence of. But I think we need to use the next year to get ourselves to a position where we reposition ourselves so we're in the best possible position, and we have the benefit of a coherent single plan that will argue for the resources that we need to get. And I think we're in a very strong position to get members because of our coterminosity and also our geography, and we need to play with the strength of our partnership. So this discussion's been really helpful. It's certainly been helpful to me in advance of Friday, and I think it's helpful as well around the development of the report that we will want to bring to the council meeting leader, just in terms of that tidying up that needs to be done, but also that look ahead over the next 12 months as well. We will, as Councillor Maitland has said, need to have important checks and balances in place round about accountability and forward movement. But we'll also want to think about what future governance might look like, not just within the council, but with our partners as well. So I think there's quite a job of work that's to be done here for us. I think it's really exciting. I think it's an opportunity. I don't think it's a problem. Thanks very much, members.
Thanks, Fiona. I've got Councillor Hislop and Councillor Thompson wanting to speak. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, I'm going to sound like the grumpy old man with a short fuse maybe in a minute. Must admit, Christie was kicking about when I was leader of the council, so that's 2012-ish. So can we really say we've actually moved in the right direction since then? I don't feel that we have. I think we're still where we were. Christie's idea was looking at prevention. The big thing, the problem with Christie's report was the fact that to do prevention, you actually have to have money to do that and take it away from the work you're doing just now to change it. That money never came forward. So we've never been able to actually move things. Although I think over this last couple of years in social work, I've seen some stuff being introduced. I think there was the programme up in Upper Nithsdale where we've put in a thing, and it started to help with the families there and actually been an improvement. So I think there is signs of that. I must admit, when Rob came in about looking down, reducing the number of plans, and then we got the explanation from Liz about how they all link together, and I got kind of lost there. It got into sort of what I call in my old term council speak, not plain English, and it sounded like we've created an industry writing plans. Because we've done that, we've now had to create another industry of how we actually link those plans together. So by the time we deliver for the public of, say, a £10 to child poverty, it's cost us £100 to get there. And I think that's something, maybe it's because I'm more a kind of doer rather than a talker. I like to see things being done. So I'll maybe kind of, the way I work is that way. You give me something, I'll go and get it done rather than talk about doing it or linking it into a plan. But if you don't have the plans, then the government's no keen in funding this or funding that. But it's delivering for the people I want to do rather than actually talk about a plan. So I don't know if that can be incorporated and streamline these plans, because they're there and you take them to the CPPB. Now, I used to chair that, and I would say I had a different view from the rest. I always thought the public sector, not so much the private sector and the voluntary sector, were keen to be there and keen to engage, and certain members of the public sector were, oh, here's another community planning board meeting, let's hope that we can get through this fairly quick till we get back to our day job. And that was more the body language that you got from the meeting rather than anything that was said. Some folk never turned up regularly. There was certain quarters you knew they wouldn't be there because they hadn't any interest in it, or had very little interest in it, or that's what it appeared to me as a elected member. So I think if we are going to do Christie, we have to really do Christie, because what we've got just now is just a sort of hybrid that isn't working, I don't think, and we need to move quicker to where we need to be.
Okay, can I invite any reaction to Ivor's comments? Fiona.
Thanks very much, Leader. And, you know, I couldn't agree with Councillor Hislop more. But, you know, we either recognise what is still to be done, or we beat ourselves up about what hasn't been done. And, you know, what we are required to do, being accountable to you, and what you're required to do, being accountable to the electorate, is to continue to move forward. So that's what we need to do. I mean, personally, I think you've far too many plans. That's probably 20% of your plans. Most of those are statutory. We need to find a way of, you know, keeping life simple, being light on words and heavy on actions, because that's what our communities want to see. They don't want to see, to hear about how we've got plans to do things. They want to see the results of our efforts. So we do need that demonstrable shift towards early intervention and prevention. Nobody's coming over the hill with money, so we need to do that. But, you know, we are still a £350 million organisation, and no matter what we are saving, we are still spending. So it's important in our spending proposals that members determine what the most important things are that are going to stop bad things happening in the first place, that we're going to have to pay heavy financial consequences for. So that's why this paper, it's so important to link it to the budget process. You know, next week is the 10th anniversary of Christie. Christie was published on the 10th of June. I think we should do something special on that day, because you know, here in your communities, I see evidence of Christie. I've just been at Summerhill Community Centre over lunchtime, and there's elements there that they're living Christie every day. So, you know, I think there's lots of things you can point to in this council that you want to build upon, and nothing succeeds like success. So I think we need to look forward, Councillor Hislop, learn from the past, but look forward and put those lessons into practice. And that's very much what I want to be able to support you to do in the time that I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks. Ivor, do you want to come back?
No, I just think it's the case that one of the things we need to address is the idea of how we move the budget from solving preventing the problem. And that's what we need. We need this prevention, because I think that'll make life so much better. Because if you don't go into, if it's a chaotic lifestyle or an issue that's causing your family or whatever an issue, then I think that's what we need to do. We need to be in front of the game rather than always chasing, because I think chasing the game is what's sort of defeatist and causes me sort of, well, we've never done anything to help that person sort of thing.
Thanks. I think you'd be interested in the agenda for the next social work committee meeting, which again is about how moving forward with the prevention agenda. But I've actually got Councillor Thompson next on as the chair of that the social work committee, so I'll bring Stephen in.
Thanks, Leader. No, and just when I was listening to Ivor, it did strike me that obviously the early intervention project that's come through transformation that we funded in the budget was very much about, well, sort of necessity being the mother of invention, I suppose, at times as well. But I mean, because there's such a pressure on the social work services and connected services, then you have to find ways to intervene at an earlier stage, and then realise that actually helps just make it easier for services, families and everybody involved to sort of have a better chance of coping in the future, etc. So yeah, and obviously we've had to go through the hoops a wee bit, and then to come back to committee next week where there is some interesting items to tackle demand. So there is still that element of you never get away from problems that have to be solved, but you can actually set yourself up slightly better to be able to cope with them more effectively. So that is something that we'll be doing. But just in terms of this report, I mean, there's a lot that's been said already and addressed, and we have to look forward, and I totally agree with that. But I think I do agree that there's no harm in having plans, but I think that there has to be a utility to them. So rather than the plan being something in and of itself, there's a requirement to have one, but they're ultimately tools to be able to deliver something for the community that they've emerged from in order to address a problem that's there, or a challenge that's there, or even an opportunity. So however, we do collect them, and they do sort of proliferate a bit, but that's not to say that they don't have their value, but they should be, they're not sacred either. I think that's the other thing. So we have to realise that they're tools, because ultimately, Ivor, I think I think we have a foot in both camps, where we realise that the way to make the best case to those who work in the civil service sector is to have a plan that presents the argument in a way that can be, that can best support our lobbying position nationally, for example, yet still is firmly grounded in the reality it seeks to serve, so it can deliver an outcome that we can, as local councillors, sort of see that, oh, well, that's had an impact there because it allowed that service to be delivered. So I think there's something about the strategic parts of this where I think community plan and partnership, yes, I think it's a good opportunity to look at how that works. I tend to believe that there's strategic minds there, effectively finding better ways to deal with operational issues using what we have here already. And I think there is something that we could do better, I think, in terms of how we, sometimes people just want to get from A to B. How do they need to get there? Infrastructure, it could be a popular answer. We tend to use our strategic minds worrying about how do we use the existing infrastructure that's already there, rather than maybe making the best and strongest case for saying, actually, we need structural investment here so that we can actually put our minds to delivering services better, rather than delivering services using what we've got in a more creative way. And we have to do a bit of both, but we have to work on so many levels, and I think this is where it's hard to separate them out, because at the end of the day, we're just, as elected members, we're sort of lucky punters, as I like to call it. But we have no particular professional skills, which is just sort of random, really. But the officers who do have the knowledge have to operate in a world where they have to do things according to their profession, if you like. And we bring to that a bit of a democratic mandate to challenge and scrutinise and bring forth what communities want, and then take that back as well. So we're very much an interface. So, but going forward, I mean, I'm probably akin to what Councillor Davidson was saying at the start. It's like, this is early formation of ideas about how to take all these elements together. And I think it would be a wee bit of I get mixed up. Which one's hubris? Which one's the one that comes before a fall? That's pride, isn't it? But the one where you sort of go, it's okay to say we don't really know yet, but we can set about putting a plan together in the best possible way, accepting that we'll probably not get it right, but that's okay as well. So as long as we can reiterate the process. And the only other point I would make before I think the heat's getting to my head is the third sector. So in the previous articles, we've basically said, weren't the communities brilliant? Didn't the community councils and community groups come together really well? And then if you look at the last article, it's almost like, yeah, okay. Anyway, back in the box, what we're going to do is public sector. And And I know that's, I can see a shake of a head there from Richard, but it's not, when you read the article, it's, while they might have a voice at the Community Planning Partnership, they don't, and we want to celebrate their value because we know as a council how valuable they are and we work with them a lot. There is still, it doesn't really feel that they're firmly embedded, given how much we rely on them and given how much we have relied on them in the last year and a half, you know. So, but I don't know how. I know there are statutory reasons why we can and can't do certain things, but really it's our communities that have been the champions as much as our staff doing what they've had to do, and yet in the last report, it's not clear how their value has been embedded and woven through that. So that's maybe something to take forward, but I mean that's just a sort of hot-headed thought on a Tuesday afternoon. So anyway, thank you for your forbearance.
Thanks, Stephen. I think it's hubris followed by nemesis, isn't it, in Greek mythology or whatever. Hopefully it doesn't apply to the council in either case. That's an interesting point about the third sector. I mean, I know the current chief executive, Norma Hart, is a very strong proponent of the role of the third sector, and you know she participates not only in the Community Planning Partnership Board, she's also on the Regional Economic Partnership and so on, and is always very quick to point out if the third sector has not been included in the way that it ought to be included. But it shouldn't be dependent on a person having that strength of personality to put that forward. It should be in there anyway. So I don't know if anybody's got any reaction to Stephen's points. So Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And please be assured, Councillor Thompson, I'm shaking and nodding in equal measure because I understand the comments you make and indeed agree with them. I think what I would say is certainly in terms of the third sector and our work with the third sector during the pandemic, that's really set a precedent for us in terms of an enhancement in terms of that relationship. And indeed, the Community Planning Executive Group that Fiona referred to earlier, Norma and I have a joint paper going to that group just in terms of how we can build on that approach moving forward. So very much agree and support the proposal and the comments that you make, Councillor Thompson.
Magic, time for a bit of hubris, I think.
Thanks. Anybody else wanting to contribute?
Quick one for me, Leader, please.
Sorry, who's?
It's Ian Crothers.
Ian, you're not on my list. For some reason, I can't see you on my screen. Councillor Crothers, come in.
Just as you finish this up, Leader, one thing I would really like to understand is, looking at the recommendations 2.1 and 2.2, note and discuss, could we get summarise just what we've actually agreed today and how this will be progressed, the conversation, the debate that we've had?
Okay, anybody want to comment on that?
Leader, through you, I mean, I think the discussion thus far has been incredibly helpful and indeed reflects, I think, the desire for us to learn from the experience that we've had over the past 15 months or so with our multi-agency approach, and indeed looking to work with colleagues to transfer the positives of what we've seen during the resilience arrangements and build them where appropriate into community planning partnership arrangements in peacetime, so to speak. And I think there's a desire from the comments made by members that colleagues are encouraged to do that. And that certainly from my perspective, the feedback that I've had from the senior colleagues around the strategic local resilience partnership table would suggest to me that they're very positive and very up for that discussion and building on that different relationship moving forward. And then indeed that would include obviously the third sector has been highlighted by members as well. So with members' blessing and bearing in mind that the interim chief has said that we'll, through Liz's good offices, look to build that into the community planning discussions and the arena, so that we can look to take that forward in a positive way moving forward.
Thanks, Richard. So, if you don't mind, just one small point. So, I just wonder, how do we as members of this committee, I'm going back to reflecting back to the reason this committee was set up, what our expectations from it as well, which in particular the type of conversation we'd have, be able to bounce different ideas off each other and so on and so forth. We spoke about that. So how will we now? So we've had that in this last item in particular, we've had a good discussion about our partnership worker and so on and so forth, a number of things. So how is that reflected? Is it in the minutes? Do we get a report back to say, this is what we discussed, this is how it's had an impact later on in future, whether it's a partnership board or whatever it may be? That's what I'm interested to capture. So, okay, we've had a discussion, we've started really at that point where we agreed the arguments for having this committee in the first place, but we need to understand what impact are we going to have. We don't like, I don't want to think of it. I've spent a Tuesday afternoon, back the whole day, but a Tuesday afternoon having reasonably good debate, especially with this last one, but then it goes to nowhere, absolutely nowhere. We'll need to see an end result to it.
Okay, Fiona.
Chair, if I can, I mean, I think it's a very good point, and it takes us right back to Councillor Hislop's point about this being all about action. So on reflection, in terms of the recommendations, then you are asked to note the causal response, which is set out here in terms of the calls for action, and you know, there is a cross-referencing and a line of sight with activity in Dumfries and Galloway. And then you've been asked to discuss the partnership arrangements, which we have certainly done, and that's been good, but I know you don't want to leave it there. So perhaps, Chair, could I suggest 2 additional recommendations? I have made mention of the fact that a report is outstanding for the Council. It's one of 2 items in your annual governance statement that I would be quite keen to get over the line. And I think the discussion here, Councillor Crothers in particular, has helped inform some of the recommendations that properly require to be laid before the Council, and clearly we'll pick that up with the Chair out with this meeting. But I think the discussion we've had will be very helpful going into discussion with partners this week. So I think we should also, final recommendation was that you will get an update on this at your next meeting, an update report, okay?
Good for me, Leader. Thanks
okay.
for that.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Maitland has an issue around, I think it's item 20 in the appendix, Jane.
No, I think actually in some ways it's all just been wrapped up now, because that was going back to Ivor's point that he wants action. And really it's there, and I think what we've got now is a way forward as sort of teased out by Councillor Carruthers and articulated by Fiona. So I'm quite happy to leave it like that.
That's grand. Thank you. Anybody else wanting to contribute before we wrap up? I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, so we if we go to the recommendations, we have noted causal response. We've had a good discussion on the current partnership arrangements and plans, and Fiona has suggested that we receive an update at the next our subcommittee on progress on the matters that have been discussed. People content with that? Not seeing anybody discontented.
Just for completeness, just through you, Chair, just for completeness as well, that we would endeavour to take a report to the Council on the Council plan as well, and just tidy up matters there too. Thank you.
Yes, I think in terms of the review of the Council plan, that had to be suspended. That had to be abandoned, because as soon as when we were actually getting down to the point when we were going to have the public consultation and so on, the second wave of COVID kicked in, and we were actually unable to take forward that part of the consultation. So this is really more of an update on what's there in the light of the climate emergency declaration and COVID.
Absolutely, Chair. That's absolutely correct. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, if we can move on to item 6, which was any other business deemed urgent, and there is no other business today. And so thank everybody for their attendance and contributions, and they can now enjoy the sunshine if they're able to get out.
Chair,
Fiona.
Yeah, can I just very quickly check? I did put an update in the chat. Can I assure members that all staff across the council are being encouraged to take up the vaccine and are being released from duty to do so, and that has been confirmed to me this afternoon. If there are any instances where you hear that is not the case, please advise me privately and I will ensure those are addressed. On the matter of Sports Day, then, you know, it's the same rules that apply everywhere else. If Sports Day can take place outside, and I certainly hope people are taking a chance to do that today, maybe a bit early, then subject to the rules round about social distancing, and if anybody feels unwell, then they should stay at home, and if they need to self-isolate, they should stay at home. Then parents and carers and grands and grannies are being encouraged to come along to Sports Day in the normal way. So, trust that provides members with a level of assurance. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona, for that, and I'll contact you privately about the issue that was raised with me. Thanks very much. Thank you, everyone.